And Mr. Chair, you are now live.
Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Meeting to order at 4:05 p.m. And now we do a roll call. Roll call AV check. So do we have Elizabeth here?
Yes, I am.
You are here? Excellent. Samantha?
Mr. Chair, I believe Samantha is absent.
Okay, yes. Leslie, I believe, will be here at some point, maybe?
Potentially, if Leslie joins, they may be calling in.
Okay. Asia, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Asia?
And also absent as well.
Okay. Nicole?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Rochelle may be late, but is she here now, maybe?
Yes, I am here.
Excellent, excellent. Jackie?
Yes, I'm here, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Vice. Councillor Deagle? Yemen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm also present and ready for our beautiful meeting to start.
Excellent, thank you. And Councillor Russell, are you here as well?
I'm here as well. Thank you.
Excellent, great. So we are ready to go. Okay. I want to make sure my camera is pointed so that I'm not shining everybody's eyes. Okay, so we have approval of the minutes from our last meeting. April 19th, I believe minutes have been circulated. Is that correct?
Yes, they have. They were circulated in the agenda package on Thursday.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. Great. All right, so are there any changes we want to make to those minutes? Hearing none, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Councilor Gammon?
Second- And a seconder for that motion, please.
I'll second that. This is Elizabeth.
Excellent. Thank you. All in favor, say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
Aye.
excellent, excellent. Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Approval of the order of business. That went out in Thursday as well. So do we have any approvals, deletions, additions, or changes? I hear none. Okay, if there are no additions, committee can proceed with the following motion. Excellent. So I would call for a motion to approve the order of business.
I'll move that. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, sir. And we have a seconder.
I'll second that.
Excellent. Thank you, Jackie. All those in favor? Raise
Aye.
your hand, say aye.
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 Any opposed? No. Okay. Motion carried. Business arising, there was none. Call for declarations of conflict of interest. Do we have any? I'm not hearing any, so that would be that. Okay, we have consideration of deferred business. Do we have none? No, we have none. Excellent. We're zipping along here. Correspondence petitions. Annie, do we have any?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is no correspondence received for this meeting.
Excellent. Let's go with petitions. Do we have any?
There were also no petitions received from our office.
And no presentations?
No presentations under this agenda section yet.
All right, yeah. I'm just going through it as with the document you sent, just so I'm right on. Okay, we have staff report on culture and heritage priority plan. Do we have Ann Tutton here? Yes.
Yes, hello.
Yes, welcome. Thank you for addressing us today.
Thank you. My name's Ann Totten. I'm a planner in our community policy program with planning and development. And I'm here today with my colleagues, Aaron Murnahan and Renee Coonley. I might let them just introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. My name's Aaron Murnahan. I'm Principal Heritage Planner with Planning and Development, and my team is overseeing much of the completion of the Culture and Heritage Priorities Plan. Thank you all for your time today.
Hello, I'm Renee Coonley. I'm a planner. I have a consulting company called Lightship Strategies, and I've been working with Aaron and Ann on the engagement for this project for the last couple of years now, I guess. Year.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen here and then get my camera back up. So 1 second. Oh, it says it's disabled screen sharing. I had to log back in, so I think that might have been what happened. Crashed on me.
Right, sorry about that. You should have the ability to share your screen now.
There we go. Okay. Can I share? Okay, and I'll just see if my camera's on. Okay. Can you see that and see me?
Yes.
Wonderful. So yeah, so thanks very much for the opportunity to present to you today. This is a project that's been going for a couple of years, and I believe that
Anne.
yes.
Hi,
Hello?
Anne. Sorry.
Nope.
It actually unfortunately didn't work from clicking the share from beginning button there. Let's maybe give it one more try. And if that doesn't work, we have my colleague Haruka on hand.
Okay. Do you have 1 second? Video. Okay. Okay. It's up on my screen. Can you see it now?
Unfortunately, no, it looks like we're having a bit of a
Okay.
technological fail here. So I will ask my colleague Haruka to share on your behalf.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Wonderful. There, and now you're full screen.
Okay, great. Thank you. So yeah, so as I was saying, this is a project that's been going for since about 2018, and I believe that staff checked in with this committee early on in the process. So what we wanted to do today was give you an update on the work that's been done to date, and hopefully have some discussion with you on some of the direction and draft actions for the plan. So yeah, maybe next slide, please. So the Culture and Heritage Priorities Plan is a strategic policy document, or it will be, that will direct municipal policies and council decisions around culture and heritage. It's going to identify tangible actions for municipal support and inform investment and budget decisions over about the next 10 years. Work started in 2018 when we worked with the provincial community cultures and heritage to develop an inventory and a map of cultural assets. So we have a database and a map now of our heritage buildings and sites, our cultural landscapes, our areas of archaeological potential, things like that. Engagement has been a key component of the plan and the process to ensure that the final plan reflects the community as a whole. So next slide, please. And just wanted to give a little bit of background on that. We developed a targeted engagement approach for this, meaning that we focused specifically on communities whose unique interests and views may not often be addressed through our conventional engagement process. So we conducted targeted engagement with Mi'kmaq and Indigenous people, African Nova Scotian communities, Acadian and Francophone, and persons with disabilities. We also did a review of previous engagements that had taken place from about 2011 to 2018 that had a culture and heritage component. So things like the regional plan and center plan engagements, social heritage strategy, things like that. And we used that information and the information from our targeted engagement sessions to develop the pillars and the goals that you see here on the screen. So the pillars are really the foundations of what we see the plan being. So HRM's role in stewardship, connection, celebration, and access. And we've developed 3 goals that will feed into those. So expressing culture through place, developing cultural capacity, and valuing creativity. And this information was presented to the Community Planning and Economic Development Standing Committee back in December 2019. The engagement sessions that we did in 2019 focused on HRM's role in 3 areas. So looking at what HRM does for built heritage and cultural landscapes, for cultural facilities, and for living heritage. So the traditions and experiences that really create that sense of community and belonging. Next slide, please. So we put together a slide here that is an overview of what we've heard so far from our engagement sessions. And we're hoping to today discuss with you some of this, see if there's more information that HRM should be considering when we look at recognizing or including accessibility in our built environment and in our cultural events. But I'll just run through in general what we've heard from our engagements to date. And I've put them into 3 overarching themes. So looking at diverse voices and celebrations, we heard that HRM needs to recognize and profile underrepresented communities more, that we should partner with communities for celebrations and events, that we need to ensure we're delivering and designing culturally relevant programming, and that we're diversifying our engagement and adopting a cultural lens to our engagement processes. Coming to access, we want the plan to ensure that we have accessible, affordable, and inclusive activities, that our grants and our funding supports are equitable and sustainable, that we can use technology to enhance a digital transformation to increase access to our culture, and to generally improve our transportation infrastructure. So that would be public transit and active transportation. And in terms of cultural promotion, that HRM can use its municipal facilities to establish cultural hubs and creative spaces for all groups, to broaden our role in cultural tourism. And I think it just might be cut off there, but promote cross-cultural interaction. So if we could go to the next slide, please. I'll just see where I am. So we have, since that time, since 2019, staff's been working on developing a number of action items, and that's what I'll be presenting to you next. Just sort of by way of introduction to them, as you know, the province introduced the Accessibility Act in 2017, which directed municipalities to create accessibility advisory committees and develop accessibility plans. And so HRM's held public consultations on what it can do to create that plan and enhance its accessibility. And it focused, the consultations focused on 6 areas where HRM could look at doing more, and they're listed there. When it comes to those most relevant to the Culture and Heritage Priorities Plan, 4 of them really speak to the accessibility actions that we've drafted. And those are the built environment, public transportation and infrastructure, information and communication, and goods and services. So Building on the information that we received through our previous engagement, we've developed, as I said, I think we have about 50 some action items, but for this presentation, I've pulled out the ones that would be most relevant to the committee and grouped them under those 4 areas that I just mentioned. So if we could just go to the next slide and we'll run through them. So again, these are draft actions. These are things that we'll be looking for feedback on in the months to come and hoping for your input on them. So the first is develop an interpretation framework and commemoration program to guide HRM's role in creating commemorative signage, markers, and monuments. Developing conservation management plans for all municipally owned heritage properties. Amending the regional plan to encourage the adaptive reuse of registered heritage sites and culturally significant buildings. So preserving their heritage value while maybe having them come under some other use. Next slide, please. Continuing with the built environment and infrastructure, looking to improve interpretation and public access to Africville. Transportation to Africville is one that came up quite a bit. Integrating public art with municipal capital projects, private developments, and community-based requests. And we're in the process of developing a regional museum strategy. So as part of that, for the Culture and Heritage Plan, looking at our exhibit infrastructure in any new HRM facilities to ensure it's accessible. Next slide, please. 1 second. Yep, for goods and services, I think I'm just looking at that. So developing heritage assessment guidelines to identify and evaluate our culture and heritage assets. A number of accessibility related actions that fall under HRM events. So trying to better ensure accessibility to our events by working with diversity and inclusion. To providing more diverse and representative artists and activities. Looking to expand opportunities for youth. And better utilizing HRM-owned spaces and parks to enhance HRM events. Next slide, please. This is still under goods and services, the goods and services theme. Maintaining and growing the partnership HRM has with Events Nova Scotia and Discover Halifax to attract and host major events. Looking at increasing the number of community celebrations that HRM supports to highlight the diversity of the municipality. Reviewing the current state of programming that we're delivering in our libraries and facilities to ensure that it's culturally relevant. And expanding the procurement of our suppliers so we have more diverse suppliers for food and entertainment. Next slide, please. Falling under information and communication as an area. One is to expand the municipal online heritage registry and web presence. Another is to make the inventory of culture and heritage assets that we developed with the province in 2018 freely available through our open data initiative. And developing a centralized and easy to navigate arts and culture web presence. And next slide is the last one. And for information communication, we heard a lot in our communication, in our consultation about grants, about the grants program. And so definitely actions around developing a centralized web portal for all our grant programs, to work with diversity and inclusion to understand and eliminate barriers for applying for grants, and potentially training frontline staff to support people or groups that are applying for grant opportunities. Last slide, please. So I realize that's a lot of information to throw at you, and it's certainly something that we want to have an ongoing discussion with, not just for today. But in general, having outlined what we've heard so far, Are there other things that HRM should take into consideration when it comes to accessibility for the built environment? And are there things that we should consider when it comes to planning our cultural events that make them more inclusive and accessible? Yeah, and that's the end. So if there are any questions or if we'd like to open it up for discussion, as I said, thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation. What we're going to do is I have an attendance list, and once I call your name, if you have any questions or comments, you can go right in. So Elizabeth, you want to start us off? Do you have any questions?
Oh, sorry, one moment for the interpreter. So did you want me to comment in particular for the 3 questions you'd listed, or just open questions?
If you have specific points that answer those questions, great, but we're happy to take all comments right now. Anything.
Okay.
We just kind of
It
had the
took just a few
questions.
parts of the presentation.
Sorry?
So I guess it really depends on the different locations. So for example, signage. It needs to be very clear and easily seen. So for example, colors that contrast well. So that way it is clear. So if like blue and green are on the same sign, that can be really difficult to see. However, if it's colors that are more clear, it's easier. And that's important for anyone, right? Not just who might have vision issues or maybe other things. So for example, if you're driving and it's dark, it can be blurry and the colors can be difficult as well. So it's very important to have very clear signs and things that you can see from a distance quite easily as well.
Okay.
Another point, this is related to events. It's very important that we have interpreters present. Really, for any events, we don't know if a deaf individual will show up, so it's important that we have interpreters there. And lastly, and when we're talking about some of the boardwalks, it's very important that we have rails along the side. So for example, if you have any senior citizens or older individuals, or people potentially who are deafblind or visually impaired might have difficulty if there aren't rails, either to hold on to or for guiding purposes. And I do have a 4th comment as well. For like smooth sidewalks. So for example, we don't want rocks, potholes, or sorry, rather paths. That was the interpreter. So paths in different parks and different areas to make sure that they're smooth. So that way they're accessible as well for people who are trying to access them using a wheelchair or other mobility devices.
That's great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, next on our list, we have Samantha. Is Samantha? I don't believe so.
Mr. Chair, I believe we can go straight to Nicole next.
Straight to Nicole. All right, let's go to Nicole. Any questions or comments?
No comments right now.
Okay. Rochelle, do you have anything to say about this presentation?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for that presentation. It's great to know what's been going on. I'm also new to this committee, so this is some of the first times I'm getting to hear about this, so this is great. I would like to answer the second and the third question. I think that's sort of where my brain is going. So the second question was around what should the HRM take into consideration when planning, when it comes to planning cultural events that are inclusive and accessible. Yeah, and so I think, you know, right now, because we are in the middle of a pandemic, there's been a lot more online engagement and online options for engagement. And I think that keeping that up, even when we do go back to in-person events, like having live stream options or ways for people to engage online, like engage with an event online, even if it is happening in person, I think would really improve accessibility. And then, of course, offering options like accessible transportation, or making sure accessible transportation is available, which tends to be something that is difficult for people to access even when it exists. So those are two things that I think would be really important. And then in terms of the third question, how do you want to be engaged going forward? I think, it's so lovely to get to engage like a committee like this and committees in general. But I think for me, it's really important to acknowledge that like a lot of people who can't serve on these committees or like wouldn't serve on these committees for a variety of reasons also need to be engaged with. So having whether it's some kind of ongoing community consultation, especially when it comes to like diverse sort of related events, having opportunities for like the community to be able to engage like going forward, I think would be really important, whether it's like surveys or other things I can't think of right now. But yeah, so having ongoing consultation with the community, not just with these specific committees.
Yes, yeah, thanks for that. And that reminds me, I should have mentioned about the next steps, one of which is we do have work on a survey underway that we hope to release more broadly later this summer to try to get at people outside of the specific groups that we've targeted. So that's happening. And we're also meeting soon with the Canadian National Institute for the Blind and looking for a couple other meetings. But the broader consultation is something we definitely want to keep our eye on. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, Jackie, do you have anything to add to our conversation?
Yes, please, Mr. Chair. I'm going way back, I think, to the groups for engagement. When I saw the groups that were part of that, automatically I thought these are groups that already have been for many generations in Nova Scotia. I guess I'm thinking in terms of the group of immigrants, especially a few years ago when we had 3,000 people come. I was working with community services at the time, and I learned more within a very short period of time around culture in terms of individuals with disabilities. And there were a few times that I was very much taken back because I realized I was stepping over boundaries when I shouldn't have been. So I kind of throw that out as a group. I think Rochelle touched on it with ongoing engagement, that you may be able to pick up that group. There's also the trans group. There's so many other larger groups. I just wonder if that engagement has the groups you had narrowed in. And along with that, I guess what I'm thinking too is my understanding is Arabic is the second most used language in Halifax. I think there's a way we need to look out in that area as well. So very good presentation. Thank you very much. But it's just I guess more questions. Where were the other groups? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We did do a focus group with representatives from the immigrants and newcomers community early on. We're trying to think of the best way to engage that group, or I should say, really say those groups in this era, because it was a little easier when we could bring a lot of people together for a focus group and people could kind of decide to come and walk in rather than an online session like we have now. But it is on our radar. It's something that we were hoping to beef up a little bit.
Is Jackie still there, or is she finished her?
Sorry, Andrew. I'm very sorry. I'm done. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, Councilor Legal Gammon, do you have anything to address?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Annie, for the presentation. It was really informative. Thank you. And just to build on Jackie's point, just for a moment, when I looked at the list of groups as well, I saw mostly centralized, and I wondered about rural communities and how rural communities have been, sought out. So yeah, the same thing. Sometimes we go to the how do I put it? Sometimes we go to those that were well known, and sometimes it would be really nice to find some of those smaller grassroots communities that have a specific interest in, and how do we engage them. And especially rurally, I find that there's some things that I would like to see us do there. When it's talking about built environment, one of the things that I've also seen as well is that there's a lot of people that look at the common branding of signage and include it in that, and building on what Liz has said as well, the height of where signage is. So we have to look about height, and when you're looking at heritage buildings, if there is you'll learn or get to know that it's always going to be on the right side of a building. It's going to be at this level, this height, this branding, color schemes, those kinds of things. I find that that's always really helpful. The other thing that I find helpful, we're getting into such an IT age, and I don't know how it can happen, but
I lost the sound. I don't know if anyone else did.
am I back?
Yep.
You're back.
Thank you. The little square that you can put on your phone, and you take that picture and it will link you to information. So, something like that people were talking about, especially a gentleman that I spoke with who experiences the world as an autistic person. And he thought that QR code, look at that, Paul Russell, thank you very much. That QR code is helpful. And then the other thing that I was thinking about when I was looking through this, cultural events and how we plan them. I was so happy to hear accessible transportation come in the conversation. Yay. I think that that's really important. But also, I think sometimes it's about how this space allows for accessibility. So it's not that you're cordoned off in this section, but seamless inclusion and how to inclusion. So I think that's really important when we're talking about cultural events. So that's one of the things I was thinking about cultural. And then the other thing that I was wondering about in terms of going forward in the engagement, how often are there check-ins to see all of these beautiful initiatives on the 4 priorities? So how often is there a check-in to say, we've this many events, this has been, the post experience of people. How do we make sure that people are feeling that the event has been inclusive, it's been accessible, those kinds of things. So I was just wondering about how that happens. I think that's enough for now.
Okay. Yeah. For checking in, that's something that we do plan to include in the final version of the plan. The implementation will include a plan for how we measure and how we check back. The hope is that we're going to continue to finish up the engagement this spring and early summer, and then develop another draft that will include information that can help inform the survey, and we'll come back to council in early 2022 with the final version of the plan that will answer some of those questions about how we'll be checking in and continuing to engage going forward. Don't know if I think Aaron and Renee are taking notes, so, and I'm listening. So were there other questions that I missed?
I might just jump in on the
Sure.
QR codes as well. I think that's something that we've heard just in terms of cultural tourism and opportunities for translation, even for visitors as well. That's something that we've heard through some of the engagement. And I think as we, do a more public engagement process right now, it's really targeted to make sure that communities are involved at the very beginning stage of creating the frame of the plan. And when it goes, to a broader survey, I think we'll have greater opportunities to engage with rural residents as well. We have been able to engage a little bit through the rural planning team as well. So to get some of those initial considerations, especially in terms of protecting heritage landscapes and cultural landscapes and that kind of a thing. So hopefully that adds a little bit more. I don't know if Aaron had anything else.
It does, thank you.
And I can just add a little bit as well. During earlier portions of the engagement process, we also reached out to community museums and community heritage and historical groups and societies throughout the municipality, including the Eastern Shore, the Musquodoboit Valley, and all the way up to Enfield. So we have been targeted engagement with a number of community groups throughout the municipality, but we will also be broadening that consultation to the public later on in the process once we have that list of actions more firmed up, if you will.
And may I ask a supplementary question? The supplementary question I would ask is access to the survey. When you think about rural, there's a lot of dead spaces in terms of rural internet. Andrew, I know you experience that sometimes if you're down in the Musquodoboit Valley, but yeah, so sometimes there is the internet desert. So making sure that the survey is accessible, even with, and Renee, you mentioned the community developers, and I mean, they are such a great asset, especially that rural team. They do a really nice bit of work, but sometimes the survey, not just online, but a paper survey and in the mail and all of those kinds of things, the ways in which that survey can be done would be great.
Thank you for that. And we're going to certainly work with corporate communications to try and get the word out to as many people as possible, but certainly relying on members of council as well through your newsletters and things of that nature. Social media would be of some help as well.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, sorry, this is Elizabeth. Actually, I have a question. I'm not really sure if this applies to the discussion that's happening right now, but sometimes I do notice that sometimes people can get a little bit confused about sort of the areas. So like what is sort of HRM or what's under which jurisdiction and what applies because of the jurisdiction that you're in. So I don't know if that falls under this, that we'd be able to make things a little bit more clear on what applies to who, where the boundaries are for the different jurisdictions and that type of thing. Because I know that some things may overlap, but I was just wondering if this would apply here.
Do you mean the different programs? So like provincial versus municipal programs, or do you mean geographic boundaries?
I guess for different things. So like for parks and different properties or buildings or museums, beaches, those types of things, which ones fall into which areas and then which applies to which because of the area that they're in. Sometimes I would think that something is HRM, and then I come to find out that when I read, it's actually under Nova Scotia. So yes, I guess municipal versus provincial, that type of thing. And if there be any, a lot of times I'll check and there's no signs or anything there. So I'm wondering what that sort of piece of land is governed by.
Okay.
Go ahead, Anne.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to tackle that question. I think it's something that we've, even as a consultant coming into HRM, it's been something that's confusing for me, where the boundaries of who is responsible for what. And that's been a lot of the work that we've done, is really clarifying HRM's role in culture and heritage. And I see that as one of the biggest kind of assets of this plan moving forward, is saying, okay, this is what we do around culture and heritage, and this is, you know, someone else's jurisdiction or responsibility. But I think when we talk about signage, for instance, that's a really good point. Maybe, you know, the signage around cultural assets really needs to say this is HRM's asset, and being able to create, you know, some more clarity in the public realm.
Yeah.
Andrew, you're muted.
Yeah, thank you for that. Councillor Russell, do you have anything to comment?
Thank you. I was wondering a number of things and they have all been addressed. Thank you very much.
Excellent. So thank you for your presentation. I believe that's all of my commenters. Excellent. Shall we move on to the work plan? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. That was very informative. Look forward to watching it progress.
Okay, then I'll leave and have a good meeting. Thank you.
You too. Thanks. Okay, Annie, I think you're gonna share your screen, are you?
Yes, for her. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, so my colleague Haruka is going to share her screen here. And do you mind, Mr. Chair, if I just speak to this portion of the agenda?
Please do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So we're revisiting a conversation that the committee had back in March, that we've had some ongoing conversations around the development of the committee work plan. And during the March meeting of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, the committee came to 3 different themes that they wanted to prioritize for the rest of this year. And the 3 priorities that were identified were around the accessibility of sidewalks, educating the community on disability and accessibility, and the annual town hall. So what we are kind of hoping to do with this work plan for this session is to go through each of the themes and establish some timelines and desired outcomes for the year ahead. And as folks are speaking to each of the categories, I will be taking notes, and with the goal of coming back to the committee for the June meeting with a more finalized version of the work plan, which will hopefully lead to its approval at the June meeting. I will give it over to the chair to kind of lead this discussion, but I am, of course, happy to answer any questions that may come throughout the process, particularly as they relate to the terms of reference. So I am here. I am diligently taking notes. You will not see them in this document because I thought that could be a bit confusing with the changing text all over the place. But I am taking diligent notes as we go through. This document was also circulated to members of the committee in the agenda package on Thursday. If folks would prefer to not have this on the screen for the duration of the conversation, we can certainly do that. But I just wanted to kind of start it off this way. So back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Annie, for that introduction to what we're pursuing next. So if I'm seeing everything right, Nicole, you are first on my list of commenters. Do you have anything on the accessibility of sidewalks?
No comment. Thank you.
Okay, Rochelle, do you have anything to talk about on sidewalks?
I don't think I have anything in particular. particular right now. I'm still wrapping my head around this work plan in general, because I just joined the accessibility committee last month. Actually, can I ask a question that's more about like how the work plan sort of works? Is that okay?
Sure, Annie, I think that's your department.
Yeah, I'm here and happy to answer any questions, Rochelle.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, my main question is sort of like, what is our role in this work plan? What kind of questions or comments should I be making on this as we go forward, as we're going through this meeting?
For sure. So thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Chair. So the work plan itself is informed by the terms of reference for the committee that are linked at the bottom of this document, and hopefully folks have had the chance to take a look through that. But essentially what the work plan is for this meeting body is to set, projects that folks would like to work on for the rest of the year. And I recognize, this is a conversation that you were not necessarily a part of at the time due to the membership change. So I apologize for that kind of situation, but really, appreciate what you have to bring to this conversation. So I think the kind of goal is for the committee to kind of work through, each of the themes to identify either like projects or things that they would like to achieve by the end of this, by the end of 2021. And I also think that, each of these themes can kind of inform one another. So if the committee would like to simply like learn more about a topic as a desired outcome around the accessibility of sidewalks, that is absolutely a valid thing to work towards. The committee itself, it works as an advisory body to provide information to the executive standing committee, which then passes information along to council. So in some of the examples, you'll see here that, there's, the opportunity for, to get information about a particular issue, to draft a report on that and pass that along as a recommendation report to the executive standing committee. A lot of the way that this committee functions is through an advisory body to make recommendations of things that could be changed within the HRM from an accessibility perspective. So that's maybe a long-winded way of saying, there are certain things that the committee can do through its like confines of an advisory body. But if learning more about a topic is what folks would like to do to understand the context of how it affects folks with disabilities in the HRM, that's absolutely an outcome that can be reached.
Hi, sorry to interrupt. This is Elizabeth, and I was just curious about the 3 different topics, only I missed it and I can't actually see that on the screen. So I know that the first one is sidewalks, and what are the other 2?
The second one is educating the community on disability and accessibility. And the third one is the annual town hall. And I can post those in the chat.
This is
Okay, Rochelle, have you been?
Oh,
No,
sorry,
I
wasn't sure if I should.
I want to be sure you weren't cut off.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Annie. That is helpful information. I'm probably still wrapping my head around some of this. Yeah, I have no comment on sidewalks at this time.
Okay. Jackie, do you have any input, comments, et cetera, et cetera?
Just a couple of thoughts, Mr. Chair. I guess in my past life, when I've worked on work plans, they've looked a little different and more concrete kinds of specific tasks. So when I'm looking at this in terms of accessibility of sidewalks, and maybe Annie, it might be you for answer on this, but I guess we've been looking at this for a long time and it's probably time to kickstart some of it. So I'm wondering if this is an appropriate time to possibly ask for, when we're looking at resources for accessibility of sidewalks, to have a presentation or presentations from the HRM experts on that and or some of the community organizations.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jackie, and through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this would absolutely be the time to, you know, solidify those within the work plan. So I would be happy to write that down in the resources required part of the work plan.
So do we need a motion on that?
Nope. This is intended to just be a general discussion about how each of the themes can be kind of worked out for the rest of the year. And then the intent will be that I will come back to the committee with the work plan updated for approval, for a vote on approval during the June meeting.
So just a follow-up question, how is it decided, please, Annie, regarding the staff, HRM staff are one thing, but I guess in terms of the community organizations with knowledge, how is that decided which groups might be approached on that?
Thank you for your question. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so the committee could identify different organizations that they would like to have appear before the committee to provide a presentation on either an issue or just like the work that their committee does. And as the legislative assistant for the committee, I would coordinate trying to get them to appear before the committee to provide a presentation. So this isn't, you know, we don't have to identify specifically what organizations folks would like to reach out to right now. If folks have organizations in mind that they would like to have in this work plan, you can absolutely put those names forward. But this can absolutely be a conversation that we have, you know, as after the committee work plan is finalized as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Annie.
Okay, Councillor Deagle Gammon, would you like to weigh in on our plan?
Of course I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. So in terms of the accessibility of sidewalks, I wonder if, Annie, it's appropriate to say, can the proper business unit give us an inventory of the amount of sidewalks within HRM? And is there a standard for accessibility? Like what would meet the standard of an accessible sidewalk? And then is there an inventory left? And then in terms of the maintenance of sidewalks, is there again, is there a standard that the committee can, and I guess this would be the presentation from the business unit to tell us about, you know, how much sidewalks in HRM, what are accessible, what is the standard that they define as being an accessible sidewalk, and then whether or not there is a financial request to upgrade sidewalks to make them all accessible within HRM. Does that sound like a list that would fit within this? Great. The other thing I would ask probably about sidewalks is, so for example, crosswalks. There are some individuals that have shared with me that the painting of crosswalks, although lovely and commemorative, but they actually can impede the for some people, like for example, like if it's different color painting on a sidewalk, then it takes away from depth perception. So I guess there's what are the concerns around those kinds of things that the business units have found?
Yes.
Is Elizabeth responding? I'm sorry, I want to make sure we're good. Okay. So I think that's it for now, but and then when we talk about the presentations, I do believe that the road operations sometimes has a list of community groups that they have consulted with. So if we could find out who has been consulted, I think that that would also add to an understanding of the list of persons that we might want to engage with in terms of getting the public's perception of the accessibility of sidewalks. That's my list so far.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Russell, do you have anything to add to this?
Thank you. Absolutely. I would like to build on one segment of Councillor Daigle-Gammon's list, which was the inventory of sidewalks. And when we saw the presentation a little while ago, there was a corner that looked great from the perspective of someone like me, but from someone who was not able to see, it was completely trimmed down, and so a car would be able to drive over it. And so it wasn't the entire sidewalk that was a problem, it was an intersection. So an inventory that would specifically identify the challenges with the sidewalks or the intersections or the crosswalks, that type of thing. I think that would be helpful to be able to see. I also want to take a moment to point out that tomorrow at the Regional Council meeting, we are going to be talking about the accessibility strategy, and looking at it. I've had a first couple of looks at it, and it is really good and really comprehensive. Thank you very much, Melissa, for the work that you have done to put that together. I just really appreciate that. We're heading into summer, and one of the things that people enjoy in the summer, or that a lot of people do, is beaches and water and docks and boating. And there is a new thing happening in Lower Sackville, where a company is trying to bring a water park to Lower Sackville. And we asked them last week if it was accessible. And this speaks to the first point on the chart, the first, or maybe the second, I'm sorry, the second one, educating the community. Wondering if there would be education to the community and to HRM staff and to anybody else who is developing infrastructure, developing a project, developing anything, to say this is the type of thing that would be accessible when you're considering floating docks. The accessibility strategy talks about being able to get onto beaches, which is fantastic. But things where there is inherent instability in the area. We asked the folks, I'll skip that comment. But I would like to see education where there is inherent instability, like a floating dock. And I'm wondering if that type of thing would be something that would be able to update the accessibility strategy on a go-forward basis. Every plan that we have is great when it comes out of the gate, and it includes an awful lot of stuff. And as time changes, it needs to be updated. So, so would the results from what we're doing now be incorporated into the accessibility strategy as we find out the results, or more clarity or more information?
Okay, Aaron, I believe you're around.
Mr. Chair, I'm wondering if maybe Melissa might be able to speak to that, whereas she is the author of the accessibility strategy.
Sure, yeah. Is Melissa on hand?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair.
Please go ahead and address that.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Councillor Russell. So And I'll let everyone know with the accessibility strategy that will be updated on a 3-year basis. So any information that is learned through this committee can be used in updating the strategy, as well as when we start to update that strategy, I will be presenting it to this committee to get some feedback on other recommendations down the road, things that we can consider.
Super. Thank you. I believe that addresses everything from my perspective.
Excellent. Elizabeth, do you have anything you want to talk about regarding sidewalks?
So are you talking about specifically just with sidewalks then, right? Not necessarily roads?
I'm not sure, Annie. How do we approach that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the theme specifically for this piece was around the accessibility of sidewalks. I think, there's definitely been some interest.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, between the sidewalks and crosswalk piece.
I could discuss a little bit about that then.
Wonderful.
Some of them are a little narrow. That's one thing. And sometimes they're not smooth, right? They can have cracks or things like that. So it can make it a little awkward when you're trying to walk or use the sidewalks. Even uneven, sometimes even quite uneven. So for example, some people who might be older using a cane, something like that, that can be more difficult. Or they might not be able to notice those things that are on the sidewalk as well. So that's something we need to consider. Another thing that is important is steps. So that's another important thing. So if it is a hill, so for example, for some people trying to walk up a hill can be more of a challenge. So if we could add steps in certain parts as well, that could be beneficial. And I have one more here. And I don't know if we were talking about ramps yet. Have we discussed that? But that's important as well. So and also we paint certain parts of the sidewalk yellow just in case there's a tripping hazard or it drops down quickly so people won't fall. So that could be another thing we can do. Some people might not use them or use the sidewalks because of all these problems too. So I think it's important that we address these. But that's all I have to comment on this topic. Is that clear?
Great. Yep. Okay. Is there anything you want to address on that, Annie? Or am I okay to move on?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think the things that folks would like to learn about, some of the desired outcomes that the folks would like to hear from HRM business units working with sidewalks and their accessibility, identifying the issues, hearing from some community organizations around these issues. The one piece that I'm wondering about would be the time frame for this item within the work plan, and I think that if folks are comfortable with this being an opportunity to gather information, learn more about this topic, I don't necessarily think that a particular time frame is necessary. If folks would like this to be ongoing for the rest of this year, that can certainly be the goal. But yeah, If anybody has any particular thoughts on time frame, happy to note that down. But if there are no further comments, Mr. Chair, you're of course
This is
welcome
Liz.
to.
I'd like to comment on that.
Yep.
Sorry, actually, I just thought of something else that came up that I thought would be important to add. So where the signage is when you're driving, when you're looking for, certain street names and stuff like that, I know it's a problem for a lot of people to not have clear visual sight of a street name or something like that when you're driving, and it's so easy to miss it. Or sometimes there's no sign at all.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, I just wanted to note that we have a comment from Rochelle in the chat here.
Yes.
Yes, sorry. I was wondering, I know that I was up for a question a long time ago, and at that point I hadn't really thought of anything, but now I've thought of something, if that's okay.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I have noticed, especially right now with the weather getting a bit better and like an onslaught of construction projects, especially around the north end, which is where I reside, that and other places like also downtown Halifax, there is a lot of construction projects right now that seem to either close a sidewalk, which I know that's sort of a necessary evil of these big construction projects. And usually when a sidewalk is fully closed, there's an alternate route. But I've noticed that sometimes some of these construction projects are changing sidewalks and making them less accessible, but not fully closing them. And so I guess I'm wondering, I mean, I think that like there needs to be something in place to deal with that. I don't know if there's rules to be followed that aren't being followed or if there's just like a miscommunication. But I guess I'm wondering sort of what, and maybe this is someone we can have come in and talk to us about like what those rules are, what the rules that are supposed to be followed are around closing sidewalks and like construction on sidewalks and sort of yeah, how fast that's supposed to happen or like what alternate routes are supposed to look like. Yeah, especially in sort of like busy city centers where there's a lot of, yeah, there seems to be like a lot of construction right now. And so wondering about that. And that's it for me.
Okay, Annie, is that something you can speak to?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Absolutely. This is certainly, I think, something that falls under the guide of, you know, who we could ask to come and speak to us about. Like, I think we're in identifying, you know, some of the folks that. Sorry, I'll reverse that. In identifying some of the issues that folks are bringing forward, I think we're also narrowing down the people that we would like to speak to or the representatives that we would like to speak to. So I think all of these are informing one another. So thank you.
Okay. Is that satisfactory, Michelle?
Yes, yeah, thank you.
All right. So we are now moving on to educating the community. And first on my list, I have Nicole. Is there
Mr. Chair.
anything to this? Yes.
So sorry about that. We have one more comment from Councillor Daigle Gammon with a recommendation of time frame.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering if we could say, because this is education and information, if we could, you know, within 6 months, have these presentations to us, and that way we will have some time then to actually make a recommendation within the year. Does that sound plausible?
Annie, is that something we can handle?
I would like, from my perspective, I think if this is the goal that the committee would like to work towards in that time frame, I think we have due time to do that, but ultimately I'll leave it to the committee to kind of signify one way or the other.
So would we want to, excuse me. I just saw a comment in the comment section. Is that pertinent to this discussion?
Councillor Russell, I'll leave it to, it's about this item.
It is about this item and it's about the time frame. One of the things that we have asked for is an inventory from the TPW department about the sidewalks and the crosswalks and things like that. And this is, I don't know if we would be able to get that back in time for us to be able to make a determination on it within 6 months. It just occurred to me that this would be a committee asking for a report from the TPW department. So we might be able to proceed with a lot of other stuff, but we might not be able to proceed on that aspect of it.
So Councillor Russell, if it was just to give a presentation though, not necessarily a report, would that?
A presentation, absolutely, but they may not be able to prepare an inventory, and I just wanted to make sure that the right expectation was set on their behalf.
Understood.
Thank you.
Okay, are we satisfied with that part of our conversation? So then now we can move on to educating the community. So Nicole, do you have anything on that?
No comment, thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Rochelle, have you any comments on that educating the public piece?
I'm still sort of wrapping my brain around some of this, but I think that I would love to know what kind of education is already exists from the HRM, if any, which community organizations are involved in this already. Just in like general education around disability and accessibility. And I guess, I'm sort of wondering more like who's already involved in this. And I guess that is part of, what I would like to learn through this. Although, I mean, and from, I guess I also, I can definitely see just from like my own life experience that there tends to be there is a kind of a lack of information when it comes to like general community, so not necessarily like organizations, although I think workplaces generally speaking are also lacking some education and knowledge on accessibility and disability. So I guess the thing I want to say is I'm wondering like what education already exists, where some of this stuff is coming from, and also want to note that there is a definite lack of knowledge in the community that I've noticed over the last little while. And thank you.
Okay, Annie, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have written, I don't know, I'm having issues with past tense now, apparently. I have written this down, is all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay. Are you satisfied, Rochelle, that we are writing this down?
Yes, yeah. And this is definitely more of like an ongoing, so thank you.
Excellent. Jackie, have you anything to weigh in on?
I don't think so, Mr. Chair. So many of my comments would be the same as the accessibility of sidewalks. I think one piggybacks off the other as well. So nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Dickel-Gammon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually really like the example that Annie, you've prepared there. Committee will hear from organizations that advocate for persons with disabilities and provide a recommendation report to the standing committee on how to communicate the information to HRM residents. That actually, that reads really well. Thank you. And I guess the performance indicators would be, how often, it's resource-based too, right? So how often can a community group get together to be able to give us a presentation about what they see their needs are in terms of educating, community on their needs. But, if we could have presentations from HRM specific, and maybe this goes a little bit to Elizabeth's point too, though, HRM specific advocacy groups that support persons with disabilities, and take it away from like the provincial groups, but zone in on HRM, it would allow us to be a bit more focused.
Okay. Annie, do you want to weigh in on that? Or have you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Daigle-Gammon, for your kind words on my wordsmithing. I've written down around the piece around including different HRM advocacy groups that support persons with disabilities, and hearing from those groups within the desired outcome and or performance indicators piece there. I think there's a bit of a fine line between those two topics as well. So.
Any response, Councillor Daigle-Gammon?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all good for me.
Okay, Councillor Russell, do you have anything to add to our discussion?
I do not. Thank you very much.
Okay, Elizabeth, you are commenting. Do you have anything to add?
1 second, navigating my view here. I'm not sure she can see the interpreter right now.
Okay.
Oh, here I am. Yeah, I got disconnected. I hit something I shouldn't have. Sorry. Okay, so related to educating the community, that's a good topic. I think we need to be sure that we're making sure our media is very clear, however we put it out in whatever format it goes out, that's accessible to everyone. I would say that's probably the biggest thing. Make sure we keep people up to date in the process and what we're doing with the information that we're collecting, and to show that we're making progress with the education within the community. So that transparency, as well, of course, back to my original comment of making sure that there are interpreters there if we do have events, that kind of thing, so that deaf or hard of hearing individuals don't need to call ahead and say, will there be an interpreter there? Won't there be? And then have to book. If not, they should just already be there. Yeah.
Okay, Annie, through me, do you have anything to say?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And no, I'm taking notes, and I have written these pieces down. Thank you.
Excellent. Is that what all you have, Liz, or do you want to add more?
Yep, that's it for now.
Okay.
I'd love to see those notes so we can all be on the same page.
Yeah. Okay, so we can move on to the annual town hall. First on my list, I had Nicole. Anything to say?
Oh, thank you.
Excellent. Okay, Rochelle, do you have anything to add to this?
I don't think so right now. Will we get to come back to the work plan like in future meetings in case I do have something to add later on?
I believe so. I believe, but Annie, can you educate us on that?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the hope is because this has been a conversation going on for a few months now, that that at the next meeting of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, that the work plan would then be adopted and would be able to be forwarded along to the Executive Standing Committee. So absolutely, there's time between now and the next meeting, but I think the intention of this portion of the agenda was to get as many kind of ideas about these different aspects of the work plan onto paper so that they can be kind of presented back to the committee next month.
Great, thank you. I guess like the only thought that I have right now about the town hall is finding a way to publicize it a little bit better. Like I've sort of been a part of this community for a long time, and I don't know, I haven't heard about these town halls before, and I'm like pretty checked into like online stuff and kind of as much as I can. So I think, yeah, just sort of increasing our like our ability in some way to, yeah, like promote this town hall and making sure that we have kind of all of the everything that's necessary to make sure that like as many people can attend and participate as possible. Probably, I mean, even if we're sort of back to in-person things, I feel like having a live stream option where people can participate through like an online forum is really important just in terms of accessibility. Yeah, having interpreters automatically present would be important as well. Yeah, just finding ways to make the town hall itself like 100% accessible in some way would be really great. Although I know that like 100% accessibility is a complicated thing to follow up on. But yeah, just sort of, yeah, that's sort of my first thoughts are just ensuring that the town hall itself is promoted really well and given as much in terms of like accessibility and inclusion as we can. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Jackie, do you have anything to join us?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and this is really with regards to the overall plan, however, specifically with accessibility of sidewalks. Just going back on Councillor Dago Gammon's comment around the rural areas, and you'll usually hear me talk about rural areas. I think that somehow in whatever information we're putting out here, we need to be specific if we're talking about urban as opposed to rural. And I think around accessibility of sidewalks, that's really kind of an urban issue. And as we go on with other work plans and update and add, I think that's something we need to just qualify and point out that the rural areas are something that's later on down in the plan, but we don't want to lose any of that in anything that we're planning. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Dago Gammon, I believe you're next on my list. So do you want to respond or?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I guess when I looked at this, and my sincere apologies to the group, but I tried to find the last annual town hall summary. Is there one from a previous town hall? And when was the last town hall actually done? I'm curious. because when we look at the desired outcome, it's like, what are the issues that we want to have the focus of this town hall meeting? So when I think about what is the content, then I'm, like, is it going to be what we've learned about sidewalks? Is it going to be about, here's a plan, what do you think about this plan around educating the community on disability and accessibility? So the theme of, like, determining what the theme of the annual town hall will be. So like if there was a theme last year or the year before, so then what are we building upon?
This is Elizabeth. It was just 2 years ago.
2 years ago, thank you.
Last year because of COVID. So 2 years ago.
2 years ago. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. So yeah, so I guess in terms of just building on what that theme looks like, would it be lifted out of this strategy? And I see Melissa's hand is up, so I'll defer to the expert in the room there. Melissa, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. So Liz is right that the last town hall was in 2019. So typically what the town hall looks like is more to give the community an update, if I'm not mistaken, on what HRM is doing in terms of accessibility. So back then, what we did was we invited different business units to attend. So we had someone from Parks and Rec to give an update. We had somebody from transportation, Dylan Young, who is on this call right now. He also gave an update. I as well gave an update on what I was doing, so it was more around at that time, keeping the public informed of what HRM was doing around accessibility.
Just as a follow-up, is there any way to incorporate into the town hall sort of like, a look in review? So what are the things that, if we think about the town hall coming up, so if we look back over the year, what are the sensitive spots? Like we think about snow clearing around bus stops and accessibility in inclement weather, those kinds of things. And I'm just wondering because the strategy update sounds awesome, but I'm just wondering if we could add into it just to even an understanding that HRM is aware of those things that still need to improve.
And that's a great point, Counselor. And I guess I would defer that to the clerk's office. I know you're quite new, but I'm not sure myself what the town hall meetings look like even before 2019.
Okay.
Thank you, Melissa. Unfortunately, as Melissa has noted, I am quite new to the clerk's office. So at this point, I can't really speak to what's been done on the town hall front prior to 2019. But that is absolutely something that I can look more into and bring that information back to the committee and circulate that prior to our next meeting.
So could one of our sort of action items be to develop an agenda for the annual town hall? Great. And is it normally a specific month? Does it happen while we're getting really close to Accessibility Awareness Week? It's the end of May into the 5th of June. But is there a specific week or time that usually the annual town hall has been held?
Mr. Chair, I might maybe ask Melissa if she might be able to speak to that again.
Yes, certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in the past, town halls have normally been in the fall, I would say around October, November.
Great, thank you.
Excellent.
Mr. Chair, It's Alicia.
Yes.
Annie, I was at the last two town halls, and too, it's the public also can get a chance to come out and speak as well, which is also helpful. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Russell, do you have anything to add on the town hall?
Absolutely. I was at the last town hall shortly after I was elected. So it was, as we saw in the chat, the minutes or the agenda, I guess it was from that one, showed that it was in November 2019. And it was fantastic. It was one of the best meetings that I had been to ever. And it opened my eyes to what should be done and what could be done. Since COVID hit, we have been doing everything electronic, and accessibility has meant a particular thing. One of the things that I'm not sure if it's addressed is technical accessibility. So this is something that different communities are generally going to be more able to attend than others, because they would be the more affluent communities. They would have the computers or the tablets or the mechanisms to be able to connect to a Zoom meeting. So one of the things, and we are probably going to be in a world of COVID when we are considering this, and so there would certainly be an electronic component to it. But one of the things that we really should try and do is have an in-person component for those people who cannot connect over a technical means. This committee and the town hall meeting before have done a remarkable job of making sure that it reaches as many people as possible. And it would, and we can't have technology being a barrier to being able to attend this meeting and being able to express thoughts and opinions and hear what's being done. So, thank you.
Okay, I think we can refer that to Annie. Annie, have you made a note of that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, I certainly have. I think, no, I'm not sure if they're present right now, but you know, there are certainly different partnerships that could be explored for a mix of, you know, both in person and electronic, for, you know, both like it being like broadcast live or, you know, certain things like that. You know, we have the Halifax Public Libraries that we could interact with as a space that could potentially, you know, we could work with to facilitate. That's just an idea, but certainly writing down that we are prioritizing a mix of both in-person and electronic aspects are of front of mind for the committee, particularly in a COVID space.
Did Andrew leave? I don't see him.
No, Andrew is here.
Oh, okay, sorry.
All good.
So sorry, this is Liz. I just want to make sure. I wasn't sure if it was the interpreter that was speaking or if it was the interpreter's interpretation or if it was you guys, but just if you want to make sure that you speak to me in the first person when addressing me or asking a question to me.
Excuse me, this is Jackie. I just want to follow up on Councillor Russell's comment. I think the in-person piece is very vital. Again, I'm speaking from a rural perspective. The last meeting, our town hall, sorry, that we had was at Cole Harbour Place on the Dartmouth side. I just get very concerned when we're talking, doing, especially if they're kind of live in-person presentations, if it's downtown Halifax, even if it's out in, I guess, the other side of Halifax, back and forth. but just transportation's difficult enough for people in the rural areas. In terms of navigating to downtown Halifax for a town hall meeting, it may prove to be very difficult. So I just throw that out as a thought. Thank you.
If I may, Annie had I thought, fantastic recommendation of having it in the libraries. We have libraries all over the place in HRM. They are our facilities, and they are, I think, 100% accessible. I might be mistaken. But having a network of libraries, I'm not talking about a location to have a town hall, because of course we're going to have COVID restrictions as well, and that would limit the number of people who can get together in any one place. So having a distribution of in-person locations, I think would help a lot.
I agree. Okay. Did I miss Liz's contributions? Because I jumped in and out for a second, but
No,
Liz, if
no,
you have anything to contribute.
yes, I do. Sorry for the confusion. I was a little confused there. So for the town halls, I've attended two. I thought they were very interesting. I enjoyed them both actually quite a bit. What I found was that there just wasn't enough time. People wanted to make comments and then time would run out, so we'd have to move along to the next person. So I would say, if anything at all, I would say we need to sort of stretch the time a little bit. I don't know if people would be interested in doing a town hall for 3 hours, but yeah, I just found that it was a little bit short just because of the time restrictions. People would maybe get cut off from time to time or rush their comments. And also, so if we do decide to go ahead with having a virtual AGM, I think it would be nice if we could add the CART service as well. So not just having a sign language interpreter, but having CART services, which is a live captioning system. So I think that would be great. Not all deaf people use sign language. Some of them do converse in English. Some hard of hearing people would also benefit from having the CART service there as well. So just for extra accessibility, if we could have the sign language interpreter as well as the CART service. And yeah, I think that's everything I had. Oh, wait, sorry, I have one more. So in a town hall, I'm thinking that it should be very accessible, particularly for parking. Halifax isn't great for that, particularly the Halifax Library. If you're going there, it's not the best place for parking. It's really hard to get a spot and traffic is quite heavy in that area. I know there's one in Dartmouth. The one in Dartmouth is actually quite accessible parking wise. And I'm just trying to remember the Sportsplex there's right there next to the library. So that would be great for the parking for the Alderney Library. Just a couple of options there. That's everything.
Okay. That's everything?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we can move on to 9.2, which is committee members. Annie, could you maybe tell me what that is so that I know what I'm doing, please?
Yeah, for sure. So my apologies, Mr. Chair. So just before we get to that, I just saw that Jackie had her hand up, but no accident. Okay. Actually, on the committee members piece, I might defer to my colleague Haruka for clarification on the function of that agenda item as listed.
Okay.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the committee members. So the committee members section on the agenda is the place where a committee member has something to bring forward for discussion or anything. Those items should be appearing under this section. However, for today's agenda, I don't see anything. So I believe the committee can move on to the next items.
Okay, the next item is in fact date of the next meeting. And the date of our next meeting is June 21st. And I say this to remind myself, the meeting is at 4 p.m. I was prepared for 4:30, so just a reminder, it is at 4 p.m. Okay. Do I have a mover to adjourn?
This is Rochelle. I'll move to adjourn.
Thank you,
Motion
Rochelle.
to
Motion to adjourn has been submitted at 5:45 p.m. Thank you for your attention and your contributions, and I'll see you next month.